Hello, good night to everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel, CW Sports. When I do is let's say story content, content about sports like basketball, boxing, football, or soccer, among other sports, and also do chats or interviews with athletes, active and retired, and sports-related people. And today I have the chance to have a let's say a chat interview with former fighter and world heavyweight title challenger Eddie Chambers, who fought fighters like Samuel Peter and Vladimir Klitschko, and we'll talk about it in a minute. So, Eddie, welcome to my channel. Welcome to my space. So good. Great to have you here, man. How are you?
I'm good, my man. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to do an interview with you. You seem like a good guy, knowledgeable sports fella, so I'm appreciative.
Yeah, pleasure is mine. And thank you for accepting. So, well, let's talk about your beginnings. Where you from? Where do you grow up? And where you grew up? And how do you start with the sport of boxing?
Oh, okay. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm now living in New Jersey and spent the better part of my life up in the Philadelphia, Jersey, Delaware area. But yes, I'm from Pittsburgh. I got my start obviously through my father. My father was a fighter in the '70s as an amateur, and he had once fought. I think he fought. Yeah, no, I don't think he fought Ray Leonard in the amateurs, and he took a beating, but it was okay. but is but that propelled him to be into the sport. He started boxing, I think, around 25, maybe a little earlier. And he competed for as long as he could. Decided not to go, professional, and then that's where he started training people. And I came out in '82, and I think from the jump he wanted me to start boxing, but it took a while for him to convince to me to that. And eventually, I started learning a little bit of it when I was 9, but I really, I wasn't really interested as a kid, as that younger kid. And then he got me to come to the gym around 13, and I started training pretty seriously then, and got into competition pretty quickly. 3 months after I turned 14, and yeah, the rest is, you know, up for conversation. But that's how I got started.
Wow, very interesting. So your dad, you say that he had the chance to fight like Ray Leonard, like Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah, and the amateurs, yeah, yeah,
Wow,
that Ray Leonard, believe it or not.
wow, very interesting data, very interesting information. Very good. So let's talk about a little bit about your amateur career or how many fights you had.
I mean, I have really don't know. Back then we had books, and I don't know how many different books I had. I think I had a few, but then I think we lost. I didn't lose it. I don't know if I lost it. Maybe my dad did, or I don't know if he had it. I don't even remember looking at my book after a while. It was so many fights I had. I mean, there was a period back when I was in the amateurs where I was fighting almost every Wednesday. They had fights on every Wednesday, and then we would go and fight. And there were times that, now obviously, if you fight in a tournament, you're going to fight every day once you fight for the first time. In the tournament, depending on whether that's first or second round, into the quarterfinal round, semis, and so on. Um, but I was, fighting almost like as if I was in a tournament, on regular shows. Every week could find a show to go to, whether it was in, we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't travel very much, but we would still drive wherever we could drive to. I mean, anywhere from, because we were in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, we would drive all through Ohio and, West Virginia and places like that, Kentucky, even though that's a little further down, and even into Maryland and different places like that. It was, well, obviously that's a little further over, closer to the east side, but yeah, we were pretty generous, as far as in driving. We went so many different places, and even though we didn't have the money, we still felt the need. I guess my father still felt the need for us to have the experience of fighting different guys in different areas. So, and he was right. I don't think he was wrong. I think we got comfortable with the idea of being on the road and fighting guys on the road, and it really helped us.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. And I like the fact that you're from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because Pittsburgh has like a lot of good history in terms of boxing. You know, because you
Yeah,
had
they got some. They got
the,
some.
yeah, like Harry Greb, Paul Spadafora, among others.
Yeah, I think Billy Conn as well. If you mentioned Billy Conn, and Billy Conn's another one they were talking about.
Oh yeah, Billy Conn.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh has a bit of history, but as far as a hotbed for talent, where most of the guys who were from in and the surrounding area typically left. Like I don't know if you know, but Michael Moore was
Yes,
another guy.
Michael Moore.
Yeah, from Monessen, PA, which is really close and in and around Pittsburgh. So, you know, but he ended up going to Detroit, training with the Kronk guys and everything for a long time.
Wow.
So, and that's where he got his success. And then you look at me, I moved to Philadelphia to become, the guy, I guess, at one point in my career. So, I mean, it's not to say that you can't do it because obviously Paul, my guy Paul Spadafore, he did well being and staying staying close to the area. He still did well, even when he won his title. But it's not likely and not normal that that happens. But when you get the community behind you, anything is possible.
Oh, okay. And I forgot to ask you, growing up, which boxers or which fighters like do you like to watch?
Oh man, how long you got, sir? I got a lot of fighters, but no, I'm gonna say a few. I was a really big Sugar Shane Mosley fan when I was coming up in the game when I was like 14, 15, 16 on up. Um, and even now, I mean, I look back at some of the fights and yeah, he was one of my favorites. But and I was obviously a Holyfield guy, Floyd Mayweather, Roy Jones Jr. Um, I like Vernon Forrest, even though I hated Vernon when he beat Shane. But I liked Ike Corte, Oscar De La Hoya. I watched, even though I always rooted against Oscar, I always respected him. But Oscar was a great fighter. Felix Trinidad, my dad's favorite was Felix Trinidad. So, when
Wow.
I was a young guy, I always wanted to be like, be like your dad, like what he liked. Plus, my dad was a real forceful kind of guy, so you had to like him, right? But I was a Trinidad guy too. I like Sweet Pea Whitaker. Like I said, man, I got too many to tell you, but one one of them in particular that even till now is my absolute favorite, and that's James Toney, James Lights Out Toney. One of the best skilled fighters in the history of boxing, in my opinion. That's so much game. It's unbelievable.
Okay. Now let's talk about let's go to your pro career, and
Mhm.
I want to start talking like this fight with Robert Hawkins back in September 2005. Did you fight from that
Yeah, yeah,
Pennsylvania
yeah.
heavyweight championship? I never knew that that
Hmm.
kind of championship existed. So how do you remember that fight with that champion?
Oh, I remember it well. I know you would think, it being that far back, but no, I remember it well. Um, at the time, he had just beat a guy who I had sparred with. I don't know if I sparred with him up to that point. I think I'm not sure, but the guy's name was John Poor, and John Poor was a more like a tough man kind of fighter, not really super skilled, but he was a puncher, and he knocked out a few guys. That he got kind of like a local following in the area, and I think I was sparring with John before he fought Robert Hawkins. So I seen, and then Robert Hawkins fought John and stopped him. And I was like, wow. And I didn't think, I sparred John. I didn't really have to do but so much because John wasn't really that skilled. But he was a dangerous puncher. But, at the time, I'm used to heavy punching guys. But I wasn't really, moved too much by what John did. So I mean, I wasn't super surprised that he would lose the fight, but I was surprised that he got stopped by Robert Hawkins. So when I seen that, I kind of moved me a little bit, and I trained really, really hard for that fight. In fact, I went to um, I had fought someone right previous to him. I fought what's my guy's name? Ross Purity, who actually had beat Vladimir Klitschko early in his career years before. And I fought Ross Purity and beat Ross Purity. I didn't like how I looked on television because that was my first TV fight. And then I heard that I was going to be fighting Robert Hawkins. So that together just had me training crazy hard. Like I went to camp with Hassan Rahman in Vegas, right? And then after I went to camp with Hassan Rahman in Vegas, I immediately went and went to another camp with a guy who's a friend now. His name's Travis Kaufman, and I went to his camp and trained too. And I had so basically I had not stopped training for 5 months because the fight with Ross Purity was in May, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was yeah May. So I was training from May till September, hard the entire time, almost daily. Going been to two different camps and just was training my head off. And I was really, really not super nervous. Like yeah, no, I was nervous, but not worried about losing necessarily, but just not looking good. And I thought somebody like him could present a problem in that. So I went into the fight super duper sharp, but so badly overtrained that by the ninth round, and I had dropped him twice. I had him in position where he just didn't want to fight anymore. But I guess his corner kept pushing him to keep going, and that was the probably the smartest move because it ended up turning out to where they made him look. He ended up looking better at the end than anybody would have ever imagined. I was hoping that I was going to stop him earlier because as the fight wore on, I got so much more tired and weak, and I couldn't understand why. I didn't I didn't know about overtraining at that time, so I just thought that I was just tired for whatever reason. I was like, how am I getting tired? And I've been training so hard. And I think in the last 3 rounds, I lost all three of the last 3 rounds, and I could barely lift my arms up. But in my opinion, he didn't punch hard enough to hurt me, so I didn't mind taking the shots. It felt harder for me to defend than it did. I mean, it was harder for me to defend than just leave my arms down and let him punch me. So, you know what I mean? It was crazy, but that fight taught me a lot about knowing your body and understanding when it's time to pull back a little bit and not go too far when it comes to training.
Okay, now let's talk back to a fight that to your fight with. First, I want to start talk about this fight with Calvin Brock, who went on to fight Vladimir Klitschko, or maybe he fought you after he fought Klitschko. So how do you remember
Yeah,
that fight, which was an eliminator? How do you remember it?
yeah, yeah. It was a good fight. It was a good fight. I felt in control the entire time, though. I didn't really feel in any danger. Um, I felt so in control at times. I would do stupid things, and then one particular time, I remember in the fight, and he had got a knockout in his career. It was knockout of the year, and it was when he fought Zuri Lawrence. It was a ugly knockout. Like I mean, he caught him and flattened him. And Zuri Lawrence was a tough fighter, and he flattened him. And I almost did something really stupid. And because I believed so much in what I was doing and how I was performing, you get so excited. It's like, yeah, I can do what I want. And I dropped my hands. I was going to stick my face out. Like, yeah, hit me. Go ahead and hit me. And I thought back to when he did that and knocked Suri Lawrence out. And I said, no, I'm not even going to give him that chance. I'm not going to put myself in position to where I felt like I was in control. I felt like I was winning. Fight ended up being a split decision, but I felt in control. And Calvin, though, and I can see how he was in the fight. I can see how people could see him being in the fight. And it was because of some of my mistakes as well as some of the things he was doing well. Like he was jabbing, he was staying pretty consistent with his punch count. He was doing things that he needed to do to keep the fight close and to keep the fight in question. But it was just that my things were looking a lot sharper and faster and looking like it was bothering him more than him bothering me. So I'm figuring and I'm feeling and I feel good in the fight. And when you feel good in a fight, it's typically going well. But that doesn't always mean that. And in this particular situation, it seemed as if I was dominating the fight. But then once the final bell sounded and the scorecards were read, me and my team and my brother and my dad and all were like looking around like, what is going on? And, even when I looked at my phone after, this is the early time of the phones, and seeing text messages of people sending, they was thinking, oh, you're going to stop him, later in the fight and all. And, you keep going at this pace and you'll have him. And to get a split decision, which I was grateful for, but to get a split decision was kind of like, man, it was a it wasn't what I wanted. I mean, it wasn't what I expected. Happy with the win, but it wasn't what I expected. But the fight itself was a good learning experience with a good opponent, a great opponent actually, somebody who had been to the mountaintop as well, and it taught me a lot. It made me understand the importance of, especially now, the importance of separation in a fight. If you feel dominant, then you have to dominate. You know what I'm saying? And I think if I would have took heat a little earlier, I wouldn't have had the issues I've had in my career.
Okay, now let's go. Now let's talk about your next fight in January of the next year, that which was against Alexander Povetkin, who went on to become world heavyweight champion. So, how do you remember that fight with Povetkin in Germany?
Oh man, it was another learning experience. We got to camp late, and we thought that we were somehow, because the fight with Brock was in November 2nd, was on November 2nd. So we figured, oh, okay, well, the fight is January 26th, which is my brother's birthday, coincidentally, but it was January 26th. So we figured, okay, well, maybe we can get a postponement and possibly fight him, maybe in a February or March. And they were adamant about no, we want to keep this date. This is the date that we have. So I guess Sauerland was no, we want to fight now. And we were already in, kind of like we weren't in panic mode, but we were in like, kind of hurry mode. We had to kind of get things in order because take to about 2 weeks off to relax and to get everything in, but also Christmas time was coming, right? So, there's a lot of things going on with family and, with your girlfriends and all that. So you kind of get a little unstuck or a little unfocused in those types of times. So we were planning to go to Florida for training camp because, like I said, it was cold and we wanted to go to a warm climate, work hard in the heat and stuff like that. So that's what the plan was. So we went and we were going to do it, but we ended up missing the first flight to go down. And I guess there wasn't another one for a week that we could book. So we had to stay home for another week. And we were already late to camp, which was late December, like around the 22nd. And we had to wait till damn near January in order to be able to leave to get to camp. Let alone, I mean, I was already training, but I wasn't training in a camp situation. So even the sparring partners, I think, got there before me, and we were just in rush mode the entire time. So I got to camp. I think it was I don't. I had 17 days to train in a camp
Wow.
setting. 17 days. So that means I had 2 weeks and 3 days to train. And really, the last day, you know what I mean? I think was travel day. So really, not even 17 days. So so after everything, ends up like, and then, you feel good early, but when you're trying to rush things and you're packing a lot into a little bit of time, it just wears you over, wears you down. You know what I mean? So, we actually get to Germany and I'm still in camp. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time when you're in a training, I mean, when you're, going to the fight, you're only thing you're doing is floor work and some last minute touch ups before it's time to get in the ring. But we were in full camp mode. We got there 9 days early, so we were still training as if we were in the heart of camp. And so, once I got into the fight, I mean, I felt good ish. I want to say good, but I felt okay in the first 4 to 5 rounds. But once the fight started getting into the thicker part of the rounds, you know what I mean, the sixth, seventh, eighth, that's when things became undone, and my body started to give in. Not that I didn't feel that from him, because I felt that I had him under control in the first half of the fight, and I was landing my right hand comfortably, and I was able to box and land counter shots, jab, all those things were working. And then, of course, the fatigue starts to set in, and you think you got him. And I remember one moment in the fight, I thought I had him. Like, I had been pushing. We had been struggling periodically back and forth and bumping and moving each other around. And then in this moment, which was like around the sixth round, I felt I pushed him, and I was trying to like maul him and move him around to see if I could start to feel the domination happening. And I did. And I felt, yeah, I got him. And then I threw the next punch. And then I said, oh man, I ain't got nothing left to take him apart with. You know what I mean? So what he started to do is he realized that and just started to do what they call the hometown hustle and just started letting his hands go. And I didn't want to throw meaningless punches, so I just took my foot off the gas and would throw a punch here and there, but I couldn't be busy no more, and he just took it over and ended up winning the decision.
Okay, so you think if you had a better training camp, or had you if you had more days to train, you think the outcome could have been different?
Yeah, it definitely could have been different. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, I would have beat him easily." I mean, do I think I would have beat him? Yes, I do think I would have beat him. I think, I don't think they were expecting me to be what I was. You know what I mean? They probably looked at a couple of fights, looked at a little bit, and said, he's skilled and stuff like that, but he doesn't punch. He's fast, but it's this and that, and he hasn't fought the competition, and you know what I mean. And so I fought Brock and win, but before that, they would be looking at that. But the reality of it is, even at that time, I had like what 20. I can't even remember how. I think I had 30 fights. I had 30 wins at that point. And even with me not fighting high level competition before, like super high level competition, with the exception of, I guess, Ross Purity, and then having Robert Hawkins for that title, and then the next few fights I had, and then with winning Brock and even Rossi, I think there was enough experience there with me. I just think that I think the camp and the failure to do what we needed to do in the allotted time is what really played that part, obviously, right? But what do I think that would have guaranteed me a win? No. Povetkin is a great fighter. He's not an average, he's no average bum walking around. So I'm not here to say that I would have had a walk in the park. I don't know. I don't care whether or not I was, dominating them like that early. And if it would have been able to go that way the whole distance, that would have been awesome. But I have no, fantasies that that was what was going to be the case. I would have had to work for it. He would have ended up making me work for it. He would have probably adjusted to some degree, and the fight it would have been interesting. Let's just say that.
Okay, now let's keep going forward, and I want to talk another fight that you had February of no March of 2009, if I'm not mistaken, with the Nigerian Nightmare Samuel Peter. So how do you remember
Right.
that fight with Peter, who fought the Klitschko brothers, among some others? How do you
Knock,
remember that?
knockout artist. Yeah. I was nervous for that. I mean, I was nervous for every fight, but very nervous for that. Everybody, knows about his power. Funny enough, years before that, I seen him in camp sparring. It was cool. I did, I just felt like he was a destroyer. So I was so worried about the power. And then in camp, I had this guy who was such a good fighter, especially in the gym. He was a good fighter. He was Javier Mora. He was like my chief sparring partner for that, and he gave me some good rounds, really good rounds. If it wasn't for having Javier in camp, I would have struggled mightily. Man, I don't want to say I wouldn't have been able to win, but I wouldn't have had that view of a fighter. And he was in shape in camp, or at least he gave me the rounds like he was in shape, and he could punch, and he was aggressive. He was everything that Sam was. You know what I mean? To a degree, but just he couldn't put it together in fights. But he really helped me. Now, I had other good guys that would come in, but he was the one who was really giving me a lot of the solid rounds. And then when the fight came, this is the game that people play, and these are the games that are played within promotion and stuff. So we fight at the Nokia Theater. It's already a small-ish venue on a stage. So I go into we go in coming out, and I look, and I see the ring. The ring looks every bit of 16 feet. Very small ring, tiny ring. Then I'm saying, okay, well, this is part of the game, right? Then I get in the ring, and I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's a soft ring, which means it's a puncher's ring, which means you can dig your feet into the ground and really tee off. But if you're a mover, it's going to tax your legs the more that you move, right? What they didn't understand or know or realize is that I'm not necessarily a mover. I stand right in front of you and make you miss. I'll move a little here and there. I have the capabilities of moving, but that's not my whole game plan. So they're thinking that that's what I'm going to do. Now, I know Sam Peter's feet are not the best. So what I did was I kept him turning, never really getting an opportunity where he could set his feet in the ground too much. And I just kept the jab in his face for the majority of the fight. I didn't have too many issues with my right hand, but it was a little bothersome, so I didn't want to throw it too much. Plus, the dangers of throwing big right hands and hooks at a guy who can knock you out with one punch is probably not the smartest thing. Is giving him his only opportunity to win the fight. Is standing in front of him and fighting him at his own, in his at his pace. So I decided to make him turn. I decided to make him miss, and I decided to make him pay, and that was you know, why it was a pretty comfortable 10 round decision. However, I gave him opportunities and I allowed him to be in the fight a little bit by, letting him, exchanging at times and, not really putting my foot on the gas as I should have did. I should have done from round one on. But um, clean performance. I don't remember ever being hit with anything too heavy or clean. And that's how you stay alive in the game.
Okay, but did you feel his power in any moment of the fight?
To be honest, he never really got a chance to really let anything go that I felt that was really bothersome. I'm gonna be honest. Um, you know, maybe he was taking it easy on me. I mean, I don't know. you know, it was just or let's just put it this way. It was hard for him to land, and it was hard for him to set his feet to land, and that's really at the end of the day what really played a part. Plus, it didn't look like he was in the best condition, but that's what happened. I can only fight the guy that shows up. And unfortunately for him, he might not have been in the best shape at the time, and that's how that's how the cookie crumbles.
Okay, now after winning a eliminator in July of 2009, then the next year, March of 2010,
Mhm.
you had the chance to fight Vladimir Klitschko for the world heavyweight title. So how do you remember that fight with Klitschko?
Hated it. It was the worst fight ever. no, no. I mean, it was a great experience being out there, with fighting with the best. At that time I was number four heavyweight in the world. The entire world. Number three or number four. Behind the Klitschko brothers, and then maybe Povetkin, depending on the time of the year and what fight I had. So I mean, it was awesome being in that position, having the opportunity to not, like I said, share the ring with the best, but also have an opportunity to beat the best and to be the best, is which is what I was hoping for. And then reality struck, and I got in there with him, and I felt good early, but things went down pretty fast, especially when that right hand landed in the second round. It's just like I spent the majority of the fight trying to figure out a way to get back at him, to gain full control in the fight. With a guy like that, you gotta just take what you can get, at times, and then as the rounds go, the more pressure you put on him, or the more difficult it is for him, the more fatigued he may become, and the opportunities will creep up. but I'm trying to force it, at that time, and it just wasn't wise. But at the same time, I didn't know any better. I didn't really have any real plan going in necessarily. And it was just, go out there and beat the champ. You know what I'm saying? Go out there and try to be the champ. And I tried. And to be honest, you know, if I would have if I would have been a little heavier, had a little more experience in certain areas, and been in certain positions, I might have things might have been different. I don't know how different, but I damn sure would not have been stopped. And therein goes the issue I have with the whole fight. You do all that fighting, you do all that work, you get all the whole distance of the fight. In the last 10 seconds, and you make one stupid mistake that you shouldn't have made, that you didn't have to make, and then all of a sudden it spells, a knockout for you. And that's just unfortunate. And I've never been down in my career, never been at any point, never been out in any other fight, never even been at risk for it, as far as people know. I know different. I've been actually hit hard one time to where I saw stars, but in this case, that was the most hurt I've been. And well, obviously, I was out cold. So if I could have just been a little more disciplined and not put myself in that position, we wouldn't even be having this part of the conversation. And maybe I would be in a different position right now. But right now, I can say that I've never been down, never been really hurt in another fight except for that one.
Okay, while you were in the ring with Klitschko, what did he, what about him that gave you the most trouble? Like his ring generalship, his punching power, his height, because he's very tall. He's tall as a
Six
basketball
seven.
player. So what
Yes.
give you the most trouble about him?
I think all of those things absolutely could have been the major problem, but I think it was his championship level pedigree and the professionalism and attention to detail. I think that's really what it is. Because if you rewind one fight before that, I fought a guy by the name of Alexander Dimitrenko, and he was 6'8", 253 pounds,
Oof.
and very talented, skilled, could move, but wasn't as strong and didn't have the same pedigree that Vladimir did. Might have been more skilled as far as like the fluidity and some of the things that he did. Now he did have that 1-2 kind of clunky step, but he still had the other skill. Now, why was I able to dominate him and almost stop him? Well, there were certain flaws in his planning. There were certain flaws in his ability, to be honest, and he wasn't tough enough and strong enough to keep me at bay. And even though I was able to do things speed wise with Vladimir and keep him off kilter and off balance and things like that at times, it wasn't sustainable. And the plan they had always kind of held me somewhat in check. You understand what I'm saying? So if things were to be different, I would have had to have him not have the corner or the knowledge or the planning or the preparation. And I had went to camp with Vladimir 2 years prior or 3 years prior, and I saw how professionally things were run. I saw that he showed up at a certain time and did certain things. I saw that if you want to be a world champion, that's what you need to aim to be. And I thought I had it, but I guess we didn't have the same level of professionalism that Vladimir did, and it showed in the fight. There were things that I did well, especially early in the fight, and different parts of the fight I was able to, get have some success in spots, but it wasn't totally obviously what I needed, and that's why the fight ended up the way it did.
Okay. Now let's go forward and let's talk about let's go to June of 2012 when you had a fight with a two
Mhm.
division world champion Tomas Adamek. So how do you remember that fight with Adamek?
And I think that was my probably my second or one of my it was one of the best performances I had in my career. I think at that point I was capable of beating anyone, but also you got to look at the size deficiencies too. So I'm not going to say anyone, what I'm saying, pound for pound. You know what I mean? If I had to fight a heavyweight that like a Vladimir Klitschko again, I would have had to make some changes. You know what I mean, to say the least. But the way I felt in that fight, I felt as good as I've ever felt in a fight. I felt almost invincible. The skill, I felt strong, but I felt strong, but at the same time, I felt too fast and athletic. You know what I mean? I felt like I was seeing, Tomas's punches in slow motion. I just felt really, really good. That was the best I've ever felt in a fight. And it's unfortunate that I had to do it in a losing effort or feel it in a losing effort because of the torn bicep and not being able to, go punch for punch. But I still think I won the fight based off of clean punching and ring generalship. And I just thought, that the judges overlooked a lot of what I was doing. And I don't want to talk about corruption as it definitely is in boxing, just like it is in any other sport. But to see that fight and to watch that fight and you only give me one round was, I think, criminal. But at the end of the day, a loss is a loss. And I knew if I didn't stop him in that fight, that I wasn't going to get the decision, whether I was winning or not, whether I had two hands or one. It didn't matter. Even though I felt like I outclassed him as far as skill is concerned, I just didn't think that I would be able to get the decision. So I needed to do more than just win a boxing match. I felt I needed to stop, which I knew would be tough because Tomas is tough. He's a two-time, two-division world champion for a reason. And it wasn't like he was coming in to lose. You know what I mean? He was coming in the heavyweight division to make noise. And he did that. He had beat Chris Arreola, and then he actually got an opportunity to fight Vitaly Klitschko, which is awesome. You know what I mean? He's had a hell of a career, but I felt like I was just the better fighter, the faster fighter, the more talented, more athletic fighter. And that fight, and I just thought that I got a little screwed, but hey, comes with the business, and you can either cry about it or move on.
Okay, and I saw that after losing to Adamek, I think the last world champion you fought was Tabiso Michuno, and after
Hmm.
that you I guess you never fought for another world champion. So if I'm not mistaken, so let's talk about the state of boxing now. So how do you see the sport of boxing now? How do you see it?
I see it as, I mean, there's talented fighters out there. There's always going to be talented fighters out there. The sport has evolved as far as fighters with skill, big guys with skill, little guys with skill, all that stuff. But I think it is a bit diluted. You know what I mean? There's not as much substance with some of these fighters. There's too much, too much. They want to show and not enough go with a lot of these guys. I don't think people completely take the skill part of it as serious as we did in the past. I think a lot of it's social media driven, and it's because there's so much activity on social media. People are so into selling themselves that the skill part of the sport has gone down a bit, and has gone down because people have to spend almost as much time selling themselves as training for the fights. And as good as they're becoming at selling themselves, they're starting to take away. And it's not all guys. I'm saying some of these fighters are great regardless, but it's taken away sometimes, I think, from time to really put into your craft. The way I came up, I spent I would be in the gym sparring sometimes twice a day, with pros in the morning, and then the amateurs in the evening. That when I was an amateur, and then even pros in both points, whether it was early or late. I had been sparring professional level fighters since I've been 15 years old, since I've just been 1 year into boxing. My dad has always looked for top level competition for me, no matter how young I was and no matter how inexperienced I was. So, I was always fighting up and training hard and spending all my time putting in the effort. I didn't have time there was no social media for one, but I wasn't really trying to sell myself. The only thing I was trying to sell myself as was a great fighter. And that's really all we had. Now, granted, if we had some some smarter, business savvy type individuals around us, that we would have came up with a better plan for, for life after boxing, or for to make me more of a star during. But we just didn't have it at the time, so it made it a little bit difficult for me to become the star I was hoping to be. And unfortunately, I mean, I became a name that people recognize to some degree, but not a household name. And it's unfortunate, but if I had to do all over again, I would definitely have done things a little bit more to that effect to help me be put out there more.
Oh, okay. So since you fought all your careers at heavyweight, let me ask you, how do you see the heavyweight scene in the sport now?
Well, it was wide open. Now we got, let's see, Usyk has got a lock on it, or Tyson Fury has a lock on it too. Um, but it was for a long time wide open, and even to now, even though we have an undisputed heavyweight champion, I still see it as a possibility. It's with the Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko, the Klitschko era was almost unattainable. It was like, to get those titles, you were having to kill Godzilla. You know what I mean? It just seems so difficult to get it out of their clutches. But now it seems, since their era and their time has passed, it since then has seemed so possible, to get the title. And I'm looking around and I'm saying, damn, why couldn't it have been like this when I was going around? I would have had a few titles and a few $1 million paydays. And I'm like, and now look at the money these guys are passing around, and I'm looking at Jake Paul and what Jake Paul is doing, and what he's created for women's boxing, and him as a promoter, man, he's making money he got people wanting to retire and strictly do promotional fights, like what he was doing and what Logan Paul was doing. So, I think these things are a welcome addition. It's getting more people interested in boxing. It's getting the fan who's not boxing savvy, more interested in it. And I really applaud what Jake and Logan and these guys and these other social media guys are doing. But it has, to some degree, diluted the sport a little bit, and it's made it more, like I said, of a show, and not enough of hardcore, real talented boxers in there.
Oh, okay. So tell me, is there anything or there's some things that about boxing that you're not liking today?
That I see.
That's
I
it.
think
Things
the
that you
business.
don't like, that you don't like today. So what are you not liking about the sport today?
Well, today, I mean, still at the end of the day, I see guys having more control over their business, so I love that. But even today, and even in a lot of positions, a lot of guys still don't get what they're deserving of as far as the money. A lot of it's controlled by people who don't throw a punch, and there's no disrespect to that. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Now, that Floyd Mayweather is also was a promoter, and Oscar De La Hoya is a promoter. Different fighters are becoming promoters, and that needs to be more of the regular. But I still feel as if the people who've never thrown a punch have a little bit too much control over what is going on in a boxing ring. And I really do believe that fighters need to get together and start to control their own destiny a little more, as opposed to allowing somebody else to do it for them. And I say all that, and I'm kind of stuck in that mode in my mentality. And I'm doing my got my guy Q. It works with me now with social media, and we're putting out this. We're trying to create something big for social media, and he does so much work because I'm so undisciplined in that social media aspect that I'm not able to put myself out there. Without him, I wouldn't even be able to do it. And without my guy, Coach Anthony, these guys are pushing me to be into that more. But in the past, I've just been so, stale with it. And I just don't want to do it because it's tough. And I look at that with fighters, and fighters have that same mentality. Most fighters, they rather just have somebody do it for them. And then what happens is they start controlling their lives and controlling their careers and doing things that benefit them more than the fighter, and taking more money than I don't, than the fighter, and or at least having a percentage that makes no sense, that puts the fighter in a real uncomfortable situation. And I think these things need to start to change. you know, for the future. And I think fighters need to get together, band together to create, what a lot of these, other sports have. Like, they got the NBA Players Association and the same thing in the NFL and, MLB and all these different things. They got players associations to look out for the best interest of players. You know what I mean? And that's what we need. But boxing is so separated. It's almost like prostitution. And I know it's going to sound crazy me saying that, but it's like we're prostitutes and the guys who run it or the pimps. it's just it's just they have control over us, and it's like, oh well, with what one won't do, another will, and that becomes an issue. You know what I mean? So we're against each other. We're working against each other when we should be working together.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. So let me ask you something. Since you mentioned that when you were like an amateur, if I heard right, that you spar with some world champions. So which do you remember any world champion fighter that you remember that you spar with?
When I was an amateur,
Amateurs and pros.
oh,
Either.
when I sparred when I was amateur or pro, oh yeah, I sparred with I sparred with everyone. I sparred with a lot of guys. I sparred with, as a pro mainly though. As far as the world champions, I sparred with Michael Moore, John Ruiz, Hassan Rahman, Vladimir Klitschko, or
Wow.
Tony Thompson. I think Tony Thompson. I don't know if he ever got a world title, but he was close. I even sparred Calvin Brock. I sparred
Wow.
um, the Black Rhino. I don't know if he had a title. I'm not sure. I sparred Charles Brewer. I sparred lighter weight guys who were champions too. Um, crap. I'm trying. Sparred Shannon Briggs, hardest puncher ever. Oh
Oof.
my God. Yeah, he was a crazy hard puncher, man. That was crazy. Um, oh man, I sparred a lot of guys. I'm trying to think of who else I sparred with. Man,
Something.
it's a who's who. There's a lot of guys, but I mean, Daryl Wilson, guy who actually beat Shannon. A lot of these guys weren't world champions, but they had belts and different. My guys, Philly guys, Terrence Lewis, Derek Bryan, Gerald Nobles, uh, Frank Walker. I'm talking guys that I know that were good fighters, that were contenders, but they never. Some of them never got titles. Some of them did. Um, who else did I spar? Oh, spar Tim Witherspoon. Man, one of the strongest
Ooh.
dudes I've ever been in the ring
Wow.
with. Tim, Tim Witherspoon. He was older at the time, but he was like a freaking rock statue. Like I couldn't do, man, trying to move that dude, hitting him, and it felt like hitting him hurt me more than it hurt him. Um, I even think I sparred David Price as an amateur. They came over and he was tough. He was tough as spar. Man, he was tall. Hell. Who else? Man, I sparred a lot of guys. A lot of guys. Oh, Monty Barrett. He was one of the first camps I went to, and that was my man. That's my man. He did so much. He taught us. He was like he had me under his wing for a second. We were talking a lot, helping me with a lot of stuff. So was Hassan Rockman. Hassan Rockman did that too. We were real good real good friends, man. Really helped me a lot in my ascension in boxing. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys, man. Oh, how can I forget? Well, even further in, when I moved on down and I was the OG, I was sparring like Tyson Fury and Huey Fury. I was in camp with those guys. Peter
Ooh.
Fury, their uncle was one of my close friends who helped me out in my career at that time when I kind of fell off. But yeah, those guys, big time, man, big time.
Oh,
Awesome guys to be around. So I had a hell of a sparring situation.
well, I see. And let's ask one more question. Of who was the best opponent or the toughest opponent you had in your career?
Well, I think that's no brainer. I'll say Vladimir was that was a hard fight. It was just hard. I remember everything was difficult. It wasn't just difficult physically; it was difficult mentally. I was trying to figure out what to do. They had so many things, so many bases covered. They watched everything. They paid attention to everything. You know what I mean? All the details were covered. It was just, It was just like going to hell. That's how hard it was. But at the same time, I felt like I could handle it. I felt like I could do it. I felt capable of winning, but it was just really, really hard.
Okay. And well, I see. Well, we
Mhm.
can finish it here. So, well, Eddie, welcome to one. We're gonna thank you for accepting. Thank you for being in the channel, my channel. Well, best of luck, and it was great talking to you.
Same to you, sir. Thank you for having me on.
It was a pleasure. Well, so subscribe to my channel so you watch more content and more interviews with athletes, including fighters and world title challengers like Fast Eddie Chambers here. So, bye, Eddie. Good to talk. Good talk to you, man. Good talking to you.
You too, sir. You, sir.
Thank you.
My man.